1. He parked in front of our garage and swore at my wife and mother-in-law, so I helped him apply for jobs. A few years ago, my mother-in-law flew in from across the country to visit my fiancée, now wife, and I for a week. We live in an apartment in a busy part of downtown Vancouver, and our garage opens up into an alley right next to the entrance of a liquor store. We are often blocked in by people when trying to get home or leave. We've gotten into a few screaming matches with people before, but this one was my favorite / the worst. We were coming back pretty late in the evening, maybe around 8 to 9 p.m. This guy, we'll call him Christopher, had parked right in front of our garage door and went into the liquor store to buy some booze. When he came back out and saw us in our vehicle waiting for him to move so that we could park and be home, he made some snotty comment that we couldn't hear while still in our vehicle, and got into his car. We thought he'd drive away, but he just sat there, opened a "Hey y'all," and drank it while looking at us and laughing. I got out of the vehicle, walked over to him, and politely, honestly politely, I've gotten into too many screaming matches and just wanted to get home, and also didn't want my future mill to see me getting angry, asked him to move so that we could get inside. He basically responded by telling me to F myself and that he'd do what he wanted. I tried to explain that he was blocking our garage and asked him if he could just move up a bit so that we could get in. This escalated really quickly. He got out of the car and got really into my face. I, still not wanting to play out this situation in front of my future mill, stayed calm and just kept asking him to get back into his car and leave. Eventually, he started pushing me, clearly trying to start a fight. I called the police. While I was on the phone with them, he had put himself and his face centimeters from mine. I stepped back and put my arm out, while still on the phone, and he walked into it. He started screaming about how I was assaulting him and how he needed police help. Because we were right downtown, the police arrived within a minute from when I had made the call, still on the phone with the operator the whole time. As soon as they arrived, he changed his tone and attitude completely. He started telling them a sob story about how I had approached him in his vehicle and threatened him. Luckily, my fiancé and future mill were still in the car and completely backed up my story. He was also parked illegally in front of my parking garage, so the police quickly took my side and demanded that he leave. As he got back into his car, the police noticed his open can of "Hey y'all" in the console and immediately got him back out of the car and demanded that he perform a breathalyzer test. Unfortunately, he had finished the can before getting out, so he claimed that he had found the can on the road and was planning to bring it in for the 5 cents deposit. His alcohol level was also below the legal limit for driving, so the police couldn't do anything to charge him with a DUI. The police stayed until he left, but the last thing he did before driving away was to throw his business card out of the window at me and ask, "You don't even know who you're messing with." I picked it up as he was driving away, already starting to plan my revenge, although with no idea of what I could do with his information. The next day, I looked Christopher up, and it turns out he was a freelance graphic designer. He had his own website with a bunch of his completed projects, and his full PDF downloadable resume. I downloaded his resume and got to work. I started applying for jobs on Christopher's behalf. I had his real phone number, real address, and real full resume. He applied to every McDonald's in the area, Starbucks, TNT, grocery stores, movie theaters, literally any minimum wage jobs that I could find with a quick / easy application process. I must have applied for over 80 jobs for him, all using his real phone number and real resume. I kept this up for a few weeks, searching for more jobs whenever I had some free time. Unfortunately, I never got to see his face as he started getting callbacks. He was truly more than qualified for any of these jobs, but I like to think that for a month or two he would receive phone calls throughout the week asking to set up job interviews, thinking that it was for his graphic design work, only to be told that it was for a McDonald's, or Wendy's, or wherever. A few months later, I went back to his website thinking that I'd start the process again. He pulled that crap in front of my fiancée and future mill. I was salty, but his website had been taken down or moved to a new URL. 2. She picked her ex and took the dog. I took the money. Guess who came barking back? So my ex and I have been having a really hard time lately. She decided she wanted to go back to her ex and has been an a-hole ever since. We broke up and now she wants everything, including the dog, that she never even wanted in the first place. She loves the dog too, but never walked him, hated cleaning up little surprises here and there, and whatever. I wanted the dog, plus I trained him and paid for professional training, so I took responsibility for him and we've been buddies ever since. The problem is that she wants me to move out and wants half of everything. We weren't even married. Anyway, the house is a rental, but I always paid for it and I was living here before we even started dating. She wanted to move in with her ex because he lives with his parents. So what did she do? She managed to get inside without being seen by the cameras, since she knows the dead angles, and got into the backyard and called for the dog since the door has that little hole for the dog to go outside whenever he wants. How dumb do you have to be to hide from the cameras but then scream his name? The cameras also record sound. So I just went to the police station and they said they couldn't do anything because we're not married and there's no evidence that we actually broke up or that she entered the house illegally. Alright. So I went to her parents' house looking for the dog since she didn't reply to my messages, and my buddy heard me and immediately started barking and trying to come in my direction. Her mom didn't want to open the door completely so he couldn't get to me and even closed the door mid-conversation. So I couldn't get the dog. No worries. We had a joint bank account with some savings that we both invested in, even though I invested 80% or more, and we had agreed to split it 50-50. So no dog, no money. I transferred all that money into a crypto wallet and waited 2 days. All of a sudden she remembered my number and asked what the hell happened to the money. I told her I invested it in crypto but I could cash it out and gave her a choice. She could choose between getting the money back or keeping the dog. And she opted for the money. Suddenly she agreed to give me back my dog. So she did. But it sucks so bad that unfortunately, I lost all the money. What a gambler I am. 3. My boss suspended me for a misunderstanding, so I took the best, much needed vacation at their expense. On a Monday night I asked my manager if I could have my morning shift covered. He said no worries, the new girl is coming in to train and there will be plenty of servers for the slow lunch rush. Sounded good to me. The next day, the owner, who has the patience of a caffeinated squirrel, messages me asking why I did not show up. I told him exactly what my manager said. He said she is not a real server yet, and the way he saw it I missed my shift because I did not have another waiter cover for me. So he suspended me for a week. I am their best waiter, never late, always on time, and pulling in the best reviews. Some reviews on Google even have my name in them. But I just said, alright boss, see you in a week. So I did what any overworked employee would do. I slept in, watched movies, played disc golf, and hung out with my friends and girlfriend. It was the most relaxing week I have ever had. On Friday night, the owner calls me begging for help. They were so short-handed they were practically using the dishwashers as waiters. He wanted me to come in for Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday morning, all while I was still on suspension. I told him I had not learned my lesson yet and could not possibly come in. When I came back the next week, everyone was very, very nice to me. They still are. 4. I wore the most revealing shorts I owned because my neighbor's husband got his feelings hurt by his wife talking about me mowing my front yard shirtless. I, 34 have been in my current neighborhood now for going on 3 years. For all 3 years, on especially hot days, I have always mowed my yard usually shirtless and in shorts. I feel like this is a fairly normal thing for most men to do, at least from what I have seen in my neighborhood. Earlier this year my neighbors directly across from me, couple, maybe in their high 30s, have become a bit of a problem. The wife works from home and the husband doesn't. I also work from home, so sometimes I mow during random moments of the day. The wife always makes small talk with me and we run into each other often when she's doing yard work or on walks around the neighborhood. Fast forward to last week, I was mowing around 4 p.m. and had just wrapped up mowing. His wife was out watering plants, so she came by and we chatted it up. Not much later her husband pulls up. I say hi, and we chat a bit longer, then we go our separate ways. Later that night, I get a random DM from this man, no idea how he had my info, and he went on this long rant about how I'm a homeworker and I need to cover up when mowing my own yard. I told him to kick rocks and stop being an insecure little prick. To top it all off, the next time I mowed I ensured that I took it up a notch and wore some revealing shorts to match not wearing a shirt. 5. She ended up begging me to stop hacking her website. This is my freelance revenge story that happened about 8 years ago, and it was one of the first times I was ghosted without pay. I created a landing page for her elven symbol jewelry store, a bunch of esoteric BS, but I was young and trying to break into copywriting, so I took any deal I could. We agreed on a pure performance deal, so I got nothing up front, but we settled on a 5% performance fee. Her WordPress store was really small, and I was aiming to get $300 to $800 out of it, but honestly, at some level I would have been happy to just do it for practice and my portfolio. Long story short, I wrote the landing page and built it inside her WordPress site. She started running some Facebook ads to it, and I was shocked to see that it was actually converting. $120 on day 1, $200 on day 2, $150 on day 3, $360 on day 4, etc. By the end of the month, that landing page brought in $6,000 in revenue. I honestly thought I struck gold. $300 in royalties in the first month? I was going to make bank from 2 days of work. Well, predictably, she disappeared the moment I mentioned the first invoice. 3 months go by. Nothing. No replies to emails, calls go unanswered. She's still running ads, I can see all the sales coming in, because I still have access to her website. Then out of nowhere I get a panicked message. My site is down. Are you doing this? Please stop. Now, I had nothing to do with her store going down. Probably just her cheap hosting. But after being ghosted for months while she made thousands off my work, I knew this could be my one and only shot at getting paid. So I decided to play along. But I had to be careful. I couldn't just admit in writing that I'm the hacker and threaten her to pay up. What if she went to the police and showed them the messages? No, I knew I had to make her think I was, but not admit to anything at the same time. So I replied, sorry, but I'm not going to talk to you until you pay me what you owe me. This turned out to be the perfect level of vague. I never said I hacked her site. I never threatened to keep it down. I just looked suspicious. She immediately called me and asked me what I want. I told her I still have access to her website and Google Analytics, I can see what she made off of the landing page, and that I want what we agreed on, which was 5% of sales from that landing page. It ended up being just shy of $1,500. She said she'll take care of it. We got off the call, I sent her the final invoice, and she wired the money immediately. She then messaged me with a payment confirmation from her bank and asked me to enable her website. IT worked. I was shaking when I typed back this reply: I had nothing to do with your website crashing. You should talk to your hosting provider. I never heard from her again. 6. He kept stealing my Hawaii mug, so I let him ruin his own reputation. I live in Colorado but had this souvenir mug from a trip to Hawaii. Bright blue, volcano design, and clearly labeled with my name on the bottom. I kept it in the office kitchen. Mark, who apparently thinks personal property is optional, kept using it. I asked him to stop. He smirked and said, "It's just a mug." So I made it his. Over the weekend, I smeared a thin layer of canned cat food under the rim and let it sit sealed in a bag. On Monday, I left it out clean and dry. He took the bait. By mid-morning, people were asking what the hell that smell was. Mark looked nauseous. Someone said it smelled like a corpse microwaved in fish oil. He dumped the mug in the sink and left early. I didn't say a word. But I did start a quiet conversation later about how gross it is when people use each other's stuff. He's been drinking from paper cups ever since. People still avoid the break room when he's in it. The mug's back on my desk now. Still smells like victory. 7. A kid kept kicking my sandcastle, so I built the next one with a rock. So I was about 11 or 12 at the time and on vacation. We were staying at a lake in Alberta, and it was honestly a good time. I built an amazing sandcastle. It had walls, towers, and even a drawbridge made out of driftwood. Plus I built it on a platform made of rocks, halfway into the lake, like a little island. I mean, come on, I even made decorative trees out of seaweed. Then the teenagers struck. This one kid went and kicked the sandcastle to bits, and even before I got a picture. My next sandcastle, I buried the heaviest, most jagged rock in the base. The teenager went up to it and kicked it again. Let's just say, the castle lasted longer than his foot. My castles didn't get knocked down ever again. Now, as a teenager myself, I still vividly remember this event and it makes me laugh. Don't ruin people's work, kids. 8. Exchange students' host family got what they deserved. Just over 20 years ago when I attended high school, we had a Japanese exchange student join our class. She was very lovely, kind, spoke good English and generally a lovely person to be around. The type of girl that makes you smile when you speak to her because of her sunny disposition. I became good friends with her and over the next few months she came to my house quite a bit to have dinner with my family and they got to know and love her like I did. After a little while, I noticed her not being her normal happy self. I put it down to the fact that she was missing her family and tried to cheer her up the best I could. One day, however, it all became too much for her and she broke down crying in front of my mom, dad and I. She explained that her host family were not very nice to her and that she thought they had been stealing stuff from her room. It wasn't anything of great value that was being stolen, however, it was the principle, and the fact that despite it being wrong, they were making her feel unsettled and sad. After all, she was supposed to trust this family. When she had asked them about the missing items they had all laughed in her face and told her she was going crazy and that they hadn't taken anything. The next morning she woke up to empty chocolate wrappers pushed under her bedroom door. At first she was confused but then she checked her things for the chocolate she had bought to take back to her family, and realized that it was gone. Over the next few days she replaced the chocolate and the same thing happened, empty wrappers were pushed under her bedroom door. This happened 4 times in total before she eventually broke down crying to me and my parents. We consoled her and my dad told her not to worry as he had a plan. My dad left the house and returned about half an hour later with some laxative chocolate, XLAX, that he had been to buy at the pharmacy. He explained to my friend what it was and told her to take the chocolate that she had bought for her family out of the wrappers, then put the laxative chocolate inside the wrappers. Later that evening she returned to her host family's house to set her plan in motion. Nothing happened that evening, the chocolate remained where it was, the same for the second night. After 3 nights, my friend woke up to see empty chocolate wrappers pushed under her bedroom door. Sure enough, someone had stolen them, but the question remained, who? This question was quickly answered when my friend saw the youngest teenage daughter of the host family rush into the bathroom and after a while, come out to tell her mom that she didn't feel very well and had a tummy ache. My friend was pleased to see that the girl was in and out of the bathroom time and time again, and laughed to herself each time she saw her rushing there. She didn't expect the girl to suspect it was anything to do with the chocolate, but the amusement of seeing her punished for her crimes was enough for her. The girl didn't stop having trouble with her bowels for over 24 hours. 9. Created a problem to keep my annoying neighbor occupied and get some peace. In the early 90s, we bought a new house on a lot that was recently severed and sold from the neighbor's property. It was a large corner lot, divided into 2 parcels. The back parcel was originally intended as a second driveway to connect the side road to the neighbors, but was mistakenly sold to us. Our neighbor, a known grumpy old guy, insisted that this back parcel was his property and was never intended to be sold. He and his lawyer messed up. He would often stand there, right in front of our bedroom windows to kinda mark his property. Trying to have a reasonable conversation with him was impossible. I repeatedly told him that I had the deed and that the property line wasn't going to change. His wife was rarely seen as she had limited mobility and spent most of her time watching TV connected to a C-band satellite dish. At the time, I was working in wireless and had access to test equipment. To find a way to keep the neighbor occupied and hopefully give us some peace, I decided to generate interference that would jam his satellite signal. I set it up on a timer so their signal would cut out 10 minutes before the hour and come back 10 minutes after, meaning they would consistently miss the beginnings and ends of their TV programs. This definitely kept him busy trying to figure out what was wrong. He even called out technicians, but of course, the issue never occurred when they were there. I could often hear his frustrated outbursts, and I imagine his wife was adding to the pressure. After a few weeks of this, I walked over to him while he was fiddling with the dish and casually mentioned that I worked in wireless and had some knowledge of satellite communications and maybe I could have a look. He was immediately interested, so I climbed up the ladder, pretended to adjust something, gave him some technical sounding nonsense about what I had found, and then told him it was fixed. I then stopped the interference coming from my house. A few days later, he came over to thank me profusely, saying I had fixed it when no one else could. From that day forward, he was the friendliest neighbor and never mentioned the contested piece of land again. 10. Made neighbor run over the trash he kept piling at my door. I live in a small studio apartment, and due to the layout of the building, my whole apartment is directly above the downstairs neighbor's garage. I picked the apartment because I have a large dog with a lot of energy and didn't want to have anyone living below me. Big mistake. The downstairs neighbor keeps finding new ways to disrupt my daily life. In winter he'd warm up his truck in his garage for 30+ minutes with the radio cranked so loud it rattled my dishes in the cabinet. He'd then leave his garage open all day, making it harder to heat my apartment. Same in the summer. Leaves the door open all day, against building rules, making it almost impossible to cool down my apartment. And on top of that, instead of putting his garbage outside his apartment door, he likes it up on my doorstep because he stores his garbage cans in the garage. At least once a week I find his garbage blocking my door. I've spoken to him and building management several times and nothing changed. This weekend was my breaking point. He had a party on Saturday and I came home to my door literally being blocked by a half-dozen overflowing bags of cans and bottles and garbage. I took all of them and stacked them in front of his garage door. I set them so they'd tip over when he opened the door so he'd grab them. Instead, he must not have noticed and just backed out of his garage and dragged garbage all over the parking lot. I got to watch him spend a good 30 minutes picking it all up and rebagging it before he could leave. Hopefully this means no more garbage piled up at my door. 11. My boss called me an autistic robot and stuck me with the worst job, so I changed the rerouting phone number to mine and changed the security camera passwords. My first job was customer service based, and it was a nightmare. I worked at a car rental yard that had a car wash next to it. They were owned by the same person, but on paper they were two separate businesses. They worked in tandem, though. The rental cars were cleaned at the car wash, but the car wash was open to the public as well. Some messed up shit happened there, the worst of which was probably the time someone had a murder victim in a barrel in his car and he used the car wash to wash away the blood that leaked out. But a lot of other stuff happened there as well, so I had to become quite familiar with the security system since I had police come for footage often. On the weekends, the car rental yard would close at 2 p.m. but the car wash had to be manned until 5 p.m. That's because some car wash services required hands-on work from a professional. We were all employees of the car rental yard, but I was the only one treated as a car wash employee, so I was the only one who had to stay behind to man the car wash. The reason I was stuck with that job is because management didn't like me. Not because of something I had said or done, but because of my personality. They thought I was an autistic robot, which are words they actually said to me. To put into perspective how much they didn't like me, I worked there for 5 years and not once did I get invited to a Christmas party. At first I figured it was because there was no party to get invited to, but nope, it turns out they had parties every year but they excluded me on purpose and made sure everyone knew to keep it a secret from me. One year though, a new hire accidentally let it slip, and when I asked management if it was true, they said yes and that I wasn't invited because I made people uncomfortable. They actually used the phrase, autistic robot to describe my personality. So that explained why I was segregated to the car wash section by myself instead of the rental section. Before I started, they rotated who was a car wash employee so it was more equal, but when I started I was quickly stuck there by myself. At first I didn't understand why, but it all made sense in the light of that comment. So I started to resent being there a lot. I decided that if they didn't have respect for me then I didn't have to respect them. Since they would ditch me at 2 p.m. on the weekends leaving me to work alone until 5 p.m., I decided I would stop doing work in that time. I would have just packed up and left after they did, but I had to set the alarm and they knew when the alarm was set, so I had to be around until 5 p.m. My plan was to just sit in the office and watch Netflix or something until 5 p.m., but customers kept showing up and interrupting me. I figured out that if I wanted to do nothing uninterrupted, I had to make the place look closed. So I started packing up after they left, then I'd just sit in the dark office watching Netflix and eating Indian food from the restaurant down the street. It became a ritual. I'd get a nice curry and naan and chill for a few hours on company time. This worked for a couple of weeks until a customer decided to ring. Up until that point, customers who showed up looking for a deluxe hand wash would either leave or settle for an auto wash. But this guy who rang really wanted a deluxe wash. He Googled our opening hours, realized we should be open, so he called. The thing is though, the car wash didn't have a phone. All calls went to the car rental offices next door. And when those ring out, the call gets redirected to the boss's phone. So I was sitting in the dark car wash office eating my curry when I got a call from my boss. He told me about the phone call and that he saw me on the security camera sitting in the dark. He was not happy. I managed to escape most of the ire due to the time it was. It was about 4:30, so I managed to convince him I only closed 30 minutes early instead of 3 hours early. He still wasn't happy, but it could have been a lot worse. I wasn't deterred, though. I thought I had worked out all the kinks in my brilliant plan, but two remained. Customers who called would reach the boss, and the boss had remote access to the cameras. Luckily though, I knew the admin password to the cameras thanks to having to retrieve footage for the cops, and the password was the same for the phone account. So I changed the rerouting number to mine and I reset the password to the cameras to default. I thought about changing it to something else entirely, but I figured I'd have plausible deniability if it was discovered the password changed. If it was reset to default, it could have been a glitch or an accident. Besides that though, I had a feeling that they only looked at the cameras if they felt they needed to, so I figured as long as they didn't get a reason to check, then they'd never realize they were logged out of the cameras due to an incorrect password. And with all rerouting calls going to me instead, they would never have a reason to check the cameras. So every weekend when they left, I'd change the number to mine, get my curry and shut up shop. Afterwards, I'd change the number back so they wouldn't find out. I did that for 6 months without getting caught. Only about 3 or 4 people called during that time, and I just told them the Google hours were wrong. In my opinion, they deserved worse. Any business willing to discriminate against employees for something like being an autistic robot deserves to be sued into bankruptcy 100 times over. 12. Neighbor dishes out hell, receives it paid back with interest. Been living next to R for 20 years. First, it started with me coming home to find he had hooked up an extension cord to one of my exterior outlets and was stealing my electricity. I have a friend who is an electrician, so after the cord was unhooked before I could call the cops on him, I had my electrician pal come over and wire up that receptacle to 240 volts. I never heard any smoke or loud pops/zaps, but I hope he had been stealing my electricity to power something really, really expensive. He never plugged an extension cord into any of my outlets again. He also has frequent, weird houseguests that stay for days/months. I think he lures them over with a free place to stay, and possibly drugs and alcohol. We got tired of them wandering over and knocking on our door, always interrupting us and asking for free Wi-Fi, so finally we set up a fake open Wi-Fi network that looks like free Wi-Fi, but when you try to connect to the internet, you get redirected and you can only view the infamous never gonna give you up music video but nothing else, so you basically get rickrolled. We have a photo of the singer of that video in a frame with LED lights behind his eyes, and when someone tries to access it, his eyes light up so we know when they're doing it. The rickroll fake Wi-Fi network seems to have stopped the weird people showing up asking to use our Wi-Fi. He also used to cut through the back part of my yard all the time, and one time his dog ran into our yard and attacked my husband while we were doing yard work, so animal control got an immediate call, and he had to fence in his backyard, which he did a horrible job on, and several times his dog has gotten loose and I caught him waltzing through my backyard walking after it like it was no issue. Last year I expanded our chain link fence all the way out to the property line, so he can't cut through our yard anymore and his dog is better contained. I had built a shed back there and was tired of that being outside the fence anyway. I got a survey and found his bushes were encroaching on my property by quite a large area, so those got trimmed back too. I also put up privacy slats in the fence, and I don't know why that bothered him so much, but after living for years with his ugly broken down Bronco parked on his lawn and overhanging the property line in the front, I'm totally at peace with him being ticked off by my new fence while I get the full use of my property now. I also had the new fence expansion put in with a 3 to 4 inch gap at the bottom. And our property is raised up above his. For some reason when these houses were built, his is dug down by about 4 to 5 feet. So as his invasive, junk diseased elm tree drops all manner of leaves, dead, diseased branches and seeds in my yard, rather than quietly pick it all up like I used to, I just pull out my leaf blower and blow it all under the fence and back into his yard. I xeriscape my yard, no lawn, and some years back when I was trimming back my large perennials, the wind picked up some of the trimmings and they blew onto his lawn. I found them all thrown unceremoniously up onto my porch. I think of this and smile every time I return all the leaves, dead branches and elm seeds from his tree. And I blow them right onto his lawn. Larger branches that I used to put through our big chipper shredder? Nope. Tossed over the fence and on top of his lawn for him to deal with. And he never trims that tree. It is very large and mostly dead and drops a lot of dead branches constantly. He also burns his fireplace in the summer and burns his trash rather than pay for trash service, which smells horrible and always gives me migraines. Yesterday we stained a bunch of wood. The stains are letting off a ton of vapors in the hot weather today, and I have some big, very powerful fans outside blowing the vapors over in his direction. One of the other neighbors told me he keyed her car once, and when he finally got rid of the Bronco and got himself a shiny new Subaru Impreza, but he was too cheap to pay for full coverage, and some lady broadsided him during a light change, wasn't deemed at fault for the accident, and several weeks later the car came back drivable but mostly smashed, the deployed airbag still kinda hanging down on the sides. Karma gets credit for that one though. We get along with everyone else in the neighborhood but this guy. I literally gave away 300 plus pounds of fruit off of my trees last year, peaches, plums, apricots, it was a bumper crop. We've got a snow blower and we help clear sidewalks for a lot of the folks too, and I've given away tons of perennials and loaned out garden tools. We're generally overly helpful to everyone else except R. When it comes to him, I am a petty babe in total control of herself. He could have had amazing neighbors if he'd been even slightly considerate and been less of a nuisance and not bullied us and stolen from us.